Excerpt from Winter Wheat. Ellen, the narrator, is preparing to leave her parents and the family farm for college the next day. Okay, this is a very short excerpt, but the excerpt or summary of the story ahead of it is always really important. You have to read it. It's good basic background information. This sets the scene for the whole passage. Let's begin. Paragraph 1. I love Dad's way of talking. That makes him seem different from other ranchers. He's lived here 23 years, but, contrasting, he still says, back east, where I come from, he's the one who gets excited when I do about spring coming or a serial running in the magazine where we're both reading. But it's what Mom says that I depend on. When Mom used to say, don't worry about my pet or chicken, a dog, a calf. It got well. Dad is always talking of going someplace. Not now, but next year maybe. Mom seems to think of nothing farther away than today or perhaps tomorrow morning. So it seems like we're introducing the characters here. The husband's from back east. They live on a farm. And the mother seems to be more practical. She's more focused on the here and now, what has to be done. Dad's kind of a little bit dreamy, maybe next year we'll do this, right? But never seems to really get it done. Okay, number 2. Mom folded the ironing board and put it inside their bedroom that was just off the kitchen. Okay, so this is consistent. She's working. She's focused on the things to be done today. She carried in the freshly ironed clothes. Dad went back to his paper. When Mom came back, she took beans from the cupboard to soak for tomorrow. Dad always said Mom could make all the dishes he'd had back in Vermont as well as though she were a New Englander herself instead of a Russian. All of a sudden, I realized that tomorrow, when those beans would be ready to eat, I'd be going away. It gave me a funny feeling. So we have the first sort of perception of what the speaker here, the narrative, is thinking. This is, of course, a narrative written by the daughter who's apparently going away to college the very next day, interacting with her mom and dad on a farm. So apparently the mother was not from back east and the dad was particularly from Vermont. She had come over from Russia, but she learned how to make some good food. I'll be taking the train tomorrow night, I said aloud, more to hear it myself. Well, we can drive you to town in the afternoon, Dad said, dropping his paper to the floor. There's no need to go to town. She can catch a train at Gotham just as well. We haven't nothing to take us into town for, Mom said. So again, Mom's being a little more practical. Dad, well, we don't have to decide tonight, Dad said. But I knew he wanted to go to Clark City. It wouldn't be so flat as just seeing me go off on the train from Gotham. My going away was hard on both of them. They were so different, and I was part of both of them. It made me uncomfortable to think of leaving them. So more perceptions from the speaker. She's feeling funny she's leaving. She's uncomfortable about leaving. While I was getting ready for bed in my room, that's off the front room, I saw how it would be if I left from town. We'd go in right after dinner and go around the stores, Dad going one way, Mom and I another. Dad would probably have his hair cut at the barbershop and stop and meet someone to talk to. Then we'd meet at the store and corner and cafeteria for supper. The train stops 10 minutes or so at the station in town, and there are other people in excitement, and you have the time to wave from the platform and then again from your window by your seat. We went to the station in Clark City to see the Goodells off when they went back to Iowa. Paragraph 8. If I left from Gotham, we'd just drive down to the truck and wait till the train came. It only stops long enough for you to get on. You hardly have time to taste the flavor of going away. So that is really to say goodbye, etc. I sat on the bed in my pajamas and my arms around my knees. I couldn't keep from thinking that time Dad went back east. So, okay, we were talking about going away and what it would be like going to Clark City or just going into town. And now he shifted gears. The daughter, I guess, is reflecting on a time when Dad went back east. I tried to, and then I just sat still and looked straight at it. Sometimes that's better than working so hard to keep from looking at what's in your mind. Okay, so it looks like here she's confronting whatever it is she's concerned or thinking about with the memory, I guess. Dad went all the way back to Vermont. It was in November, and it was already dark when the train came through Gotham. Even now I could feel how cold and dark it was. I held Mom's hand. Dad was so dressed up, he seemed strange. We stood there without saying anything until Dad told Mom to remember to call Mr. Bardich, her neighbor, with the cab tomorrow. I'll manage, Mom snapped back. I wish you could go, Anna, Dad said to Mom. And we could take Ellen. Goodbye, Anna Petrovna, he said, looking at Mom. I had never heard him call her that by two names before. Goodbye, Mom said. standing still without smiling. So I guess the daughter had never really heard her full name. It seems not unusual. A lot of times you just call mom and dad. You don't really know their full name or get used to it. 15. Then he was gone, and the crossroads were darker than ever. So we get the idea of coldness, darkness. There's like a heavy feeling. The train light shone on the high window in the top of the grain elevator for a moment, and then that too was dark. We got into our old Ford, drove back to the house. My throat ached all the way. The name Dad had called Mom kept saying to myself in my ears, Anna Petrovna, Anna Petrovna. Our house seemed lonely when we came back to it, so more kind of dark, lonely feelings and descriptive words. It seemed to be hiding under the coulee. Mom went with Mom. I went with Mom to put the truck in the barn. It was bigger than the house. I think Mom was proud of her barn in the house. Anyway, we walked back to look at the cow that was going to calve. She was just a big light blob in the dark. I thought she was exciting this morning, but now she seemed sad too. So everything seems sad when the dad's gone away. The wind blew when we walked across the open space to the house, and I could not help shivering in the cold. Inside the house, it was warm, but empty. Again, we get this idea of lonely, empty, dark. Bring your nightgown in here, and I'll heat you some milk, Mom said. I drank the milk on a stool in front of the stove. It tasted good, but the lonely ache in my throat was still there. I picked up my clothes and hung them neatly behind the stove and in the cupboard. My mom was fixing oatmeal for tomorrow morning. Good night, Mom, I said almost timidly, standing beside her. She seemed wrapped around in a kind of strangeness. Then she turned around and drew me to her. The front of her dress was warm from the stove. I felt the comfortable heat through my gown. She laid her hand against my face, and it felt rough and hard but firm. I dared ask her something I wanted to know. Mom, was that really your name, what Dad called you? Her voice sounded surprised. Why, Yelena, you know that. Anna Petrovna, you know I am born in Russia, in Selitsko. Okay, so I can see why it was hard for her to confront this because it's a lonely experience she had when she got home. But at the end, it looks like the mom not only made milk for her, which didn't quite do it, but she turned and hugged her closely. And that made home seem like home again, according to the narrator. And then finally she asked her again about the Anna Petrovna. So again, first-person narrative, I seem to have a sense of how it progresses in the ideas. The main character who's going away to school, we're introduced to the characters. The mom and dad are fairly different, and they're kind of debating whether they should go into Clark City to say goodbye the next day or stay in town to say goodbye and get on the train there. And then we switch to the concerns of the narrator. She's thinking about the memories of when Dad went away. She's already at this point indicated she's feeling uncomfortable about going away. She seems a little lonesome or nostalgic because the food Mom's preparing, she won't even be there to really have the next day. And so then she goes into this memory when Dad left, and she was lonely, and everything was kind of dark and lonely until Mom finally pulled the daughter to her and made her feel better. Let's answer the questions.